We're now going to move on to Mr. Kram for 5 minutes, the Conservative Party. Mr. Kram, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to thank all the witnesses for joining us today and sharing their perspectives on this very important study. I was particularly interested in the opening statements by Mr. Wayland and Ms. Davio, in particular with your request for a $750 million subsidy to NAVCANADA. And this subsidy would be contingent on a moratorium on layoffs. As I'm sure you're aware, NAVCANADA is currently studying the closure of several air traffic control towers across Canada. Does that mean that your unions are also in favor of a moratorium on the closure of air traffic control towers as well?
Mr. Kram, who did you want that question?
Could I get Mr. Wayland and Ms. Davio?
Thank you. Mr. Wayland, Ms. Davio.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Kram. Yes, I mean, certainly we've heard from witnesses and from members of the committee that any reduction in services is not just for airlines, but it's food security, it is cargo, materials, getting to these smaller airports. So we certainly want to see a moratorium on those, as well as any layoffs. And I believe my colleague, Mr. Cameron, did mention that the reduction in staffing also increases fatigue for those that may be still left behind.
Thank you, Mr. Wayland. Ms. Davio?
Yeah, thank you. As you could tell by Matt and my opening remarks, we've been comparing notes and working together on this issue. That's because not one of our groups of members could operate in a silo, and the workers, particularly at NAVCANADA, rely very heavily on each other's expertise. So a cut to my members, for example, could necessarily affect the safety of other members and the Canadian public. And so it's really important to recognize that we're not just talking about an airline industry, as I mentioned. This is about a whole aviation industry. And when you cut workers, you absolutely have to reduce points of service, or at least reduce the level of service that necessarily impacts on safety for Canadians, and definitely needs to be addressed. So we absolutely support a moratorium on further layoffs. We believe that the money that we're requesting could fund the existing workforce so that no further cuts are required. Because as we mentioned, it was NAVCANADA was understaffed even before the pandemic, and understanding that there's been a reduction in air traffic, a number of these services don't reduce their workload as a result of reduced flights. So it means that those left behind are going to have to work that much harder, and again, results in safety concerns for Canadians.
Thank you, Ms. Davio. Mr. Kram, the floor is yours again.
Yes, and I believe Mr. Wayland and Ms. Davio had indicated that they were unable to get a meeting with the minister to present this plan, but they were able to meet with the parliamentary staff of the minister. So can you tell us, what did the parliamentary staff say when you presented the plan for a subsidy for NAVCANADA?
Ms. Davio?
They said, thank you very much. We'll relay this information to the minister. Unfortunately, no outward support of the plan, or even understanding of the urgency of putting a plan in place. I mean, these cuts are happening as we speak all across the entire industry, and time is not our friend here. And, in many parts of this industry, you simply can't flick the switch and put it back on once you've taken these steps to make mass reductions across the industry. So,
thank you, Ms. Davio. Mr. Wayland, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Certainly, that is the case. We've had meetings with the minister's staff. I've had several myself. I did relay the information as well to meetings at the PMO office, trying to push it up the chain. It was meant, we did have some discussions on it, but again, we're still here discussing it today.
Thank you, Mr. Wayland, and thank you, Mr. Kram.